Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. It's Sunday morning. I hope you've got a cup of coffee in your hand and that the morning is going well for you already. And I've got my big cock full of coffee here. So let's move on. You know, I think I bought these cups just so I could say that. And so Rainey was going through the cupboards yesterday, and the older kids were around, and she was joking around about running out of cupboard space, and everybody's laughing about this or that or the other thing. And she said something about, well, does Dad want to keep his big cock cups? So there you go, cock a doodle doo, happy coffee. There it is. Mm. Roger Rabbit waiting in line to pay $15 for 4 hash browns and 2 coffees. Yay. Yeah, it's becoming expensive, isn't it? I went to the grocery store last night. We had some friends impromptu. We did a little cookout to have some burgers and stuff because we had all these burgers in the freezer, and we pulled them out, and you know the kind. It's good beef, but they're pre-made patties in the plastic wrap, and so we pulled all those out and made a little a roster of what we had, and I said I'm gonna have to go over to the store. I'll run over and I'll get some potato salad and what did we need? Some chips and some beans, just your typical backyard grill type of fare without getting too fancy, just cobbling something together rather quickly. And so we took care of all that. And I ran to the store, and that's what I got. I got a couple of cans of baked beans, a couple of cans of chili. I found some good gluten-free chili. And by the way, those of you who are fans, it was Yellowstone brand chili, which I didn't even know they were making brands of food like that. But Rainy needs gluten free, and and I had to get a case on wieners, and so I got those, and um, what else did I get? A little bag of lettuce, some sodas. So we had sodas for people. So that's really the list. It wasn't a big thing. The moral to this story is I spent $97 picking up pretty much lettuce, a couple of tomatoes, a couple of cans of beans, a couple of cans of chili, couple of or some skin on wieners, and we call them uncircumcised hot dogs, and potato chips and a potato salad and stuff like that. $97. It's like, you got to be kidding me. So, and that was at Walmart because that was the closest grocery store. The closest grocery store, I take that back, is the local one, which is that local one is a little more expensive. It's a chain, but it's local to a lot of the smaller towns here in Wisconsin, and it's they're a lot more expensive than the regular stuff. So yeah, those little things of potato salad, yeah, I did get 3 of them. Well, we got 2 potato salad, 2 different kinds. I called Rainey on the phone because, I'm a husband. I can't make independent decisions. So I have to call and make sure I'm getting the right kind of potato salad. Do you want the Amish potato salad, the original potato salad, or no, it was Amish potato salad, there was mustard potato salad, and there was deviled egg potato salad. She goes, ooh, get the deviled egg and the mustard. So I had to get 2, and so on. So, hey, listen, I got something I've got to take care of upstairs, I hear, and I got to get some more coffee. I've already been sitting here with coffee. We're already going to take just a little break. I'll be gone for just a minute. It is not a pee break, just in case you wondered. So everybody gather. If I had Jason here, I'd have him talk to you and pet you all for the morning and prompt you. But let me put up the graphic, and I will be right back. I've got to run upstairs quick. So stand by. You're listening to Sunday morning. It's Sunday. At least you can still call and verbally communicate the options. Yeah, I see lots of guys shopping using FaceTime. Yeah. So, there we go. I'll be right back. I gotta go take care of a little business up there, and I'll be right back. And if you're all still here, crisis averted. Thank you all for waiting it out. Wow, we still got a bunch of you here. So good to see you. Sorry for that little interlude. I don't even know how long that took. Rainey went outside and she was helping. We had a bit of a bonfire last night, and she stepped outside this morning, noticed the coals were still glowing. And so she went to put it out while I started this radio show. And she just got an eyes full of soot and charcoal bits. So we got her all rinsed out, and she's doing okay. She was hoping she didn't scratch her eyeballs. So she is upstairs. And so I think crisis averted. So there you go. Hey, Morgan Snow, good to see you, field guy. Yeah, I bought the wrong potato salad. Yeah. Thank you, Roger Rabbit. I'm back. Josh Kemp, good to see you. I was going to say I didn't know if I came in at a bad time. No, it was an okay time. Just had to help Rainey out and take care of a little business. So I heard stuff going on, and so I went upstairs. And I didn't know what it was, but it's Sunday morning. It's a casual morning. And this is pretty much how things roll on this show. So good to see you all this morning. I don't think I've missed anybody. Cordia, good to see you. Josh Kemp, I think your tumblers just went out in the mail. As long as you're here, I can tell you that. JP just came into the room. Roger Rabbit is here if I didn't say hi. Yeah, that food was super fresh. Yeah, it was super expensive is what it was. So again, what we left off with is going to the store last night to pick up a few necessities. Rennie said, "Don't overdo it. I'm going to go big grocery shopping tomorrow." And so I got the few things. Lettuce, hot dogs, potato salad for the cookout, and a tomato or two, and a couple of things of soda for everybody, 12 packs, and ended up being $97. So welcome to Bidenomics. So, hey, Steph, good to see you. Now, Josh, I will. The bill's in the mail. So, that is my cock full of coffee this morning. Cock-a-doodle-doo, grab your coffee. So, I buy food at my work. I see if something good we have cheap as hell. Yeah. Well, that was one of the things about working up at the Dollar General that Rainey is able to do. The little thrift store here in town. There are things that come up to expiration dates and they're supposed to throw them. Well, they've been told just go ahead. If you want to take some of that stuff, just take it rather than throw it in the dumpster. There are some companies, like I worked for Quick Trip last summer for about a month. If their food expired, the employees couldn't take it. Oh no, it had to be thrown out. And usually a week ahead of the expiration date for company policy. And the stuff that Rainey would bring home, some milk and some juice every now and then, and cheese, stuff's nothing wrong with it. So it's just, what do they say? It's supposed to be able to last for a week or 2 weeks past its expiration date anyway. So, but legally they couldn't sell it. So she'd bring it home. Yep, food is ridiculous, Josh. So how about you guys? What are you guys experiencing out there with the lovely economy and inflation? Is it really getting better? We know that they say inflation is down to like from 9.2 to 3.6 or 7 over the last 6 months. But that is the overall inflation rate. It's only rising at 3.7 now as opposed to 9.2. But prices are still out of this world. Like Roger was saying, you go get 2 hash browns and a couple of coffees, and you're paying $15. And so, hey, Unleash Jeremy Henson, good to see you. The old sell by use date. Yes, Jason. So, are you faring better under Bidenomics and the Biden economy? I know they needed to have a conviction of Trump so they had something to sell themselves with. Well, at least I'm not a convicted criminal, convicted of felonies. So now they've got their big new campaign thrust. But what are they doing? What are they saying they are actually accomplishing? I hear people all the time want to argue with me and say, well, Biden's accomplished so much. And I said, like, well, the economy's improved. It has. How much did you pay for gas today? How much did you pay for a gallon of milk? Has the economy improved? How much is your heating oil, your heating fuel for your house? So all of those factors. Yeah, it's a little rough on a fixed income. I'm sure Morgan Snow. Field guy's just cheap, he says. Steph said, I went to a streaming service and Fire Stick and got a full year for $150. Streaming service and Fire Stick. So what does that get you? Is that to start campfires? Is it to watch internet or watch shows via internet? I'm not sure what all that is. Streaming service is what I've got to put out this radio show. And a Fire Stick. I know what Fire Sticks are. Find The Mailman, please, with Kevin Costner. And so damn taxes and insurance, and then the house went up, says Morgan Snow. Yep. Field guy has 63 free OTA channels just with a regular antenna. What's OTA? I don't know. What's OTA mean? I have no clue. So, yeah, we do the thing. We got rid of cable TV a long time ago, which I think isn't cable TV pretty much going out. That's like, oh, that's so 2010s. I mean, is it over the air? Yeah. Yeah, we get some of that too. We hook up our antenna. We get over the air stuff, but it's still not everything you want to have. Yeah, fuel is still way above the Trump days. So overall, do we think the economy is improving, or how are you guys experiencing the economy today? Is it improving for you? And by the way, if you want to come into this show and talk, you're welcome to do so. Boom. We're off to an inauspicious start today. What was I, 5 minutes into the broadcast, and I had to step out for 5 to 10 minutes? We had a little crisis averted, but Rainey got her eyes full of charcoal from putting out the fire out in the backyard. And there was a fire we had last night, and apparently there were still some coals that were burning, embers, this morning. And as she was doing something with that, she puffed up a bunch of, that debris into the air and right into her eyes, coated her eyes. About 5 minutes into this show. So let's see. What does JP say? I need to get my coffee made, and then I'll call in. Oh, all right. Did I even paste it in here? Let's do it again. If you want to join me on here, there's the link. Have so many people talked since I pasted that in that, or did I just not do it yet? Also, here's a question for you. Even though we've kind of talked about this the other day, without getting into it full bore this morning, what's your take on what happened with the verdict for Trump's trial? What does that do? Will that have the desired effect that Biden and the Democrats wanted it to have? Which means that people are going to not vote for him. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think people are still going to vote for him? There's, yes, an initial surge after that of all his supporters, even people who said now I would never have voted for Trump, but now I will. They say because they see what is going on. They look at this with open eyes. And because it's really going to come down to one thing, folks. It's going to be Biden or Trump for the next 4 years. I don't care who you love and who you'd like to support, and that minor person over there, or this rising star over here, or this independent thing over here. I don't care about protest votes. I don't care about nothing. It's going to be Trump or Biden. There is nobody else that is going to make the office. So you have to decide, what am I going to do with my vote? Even if I think my vote is ineffectual, but standing and I'm making my protest vote because I want my third party guy in. So let me ask you, what good is that doing your country? Do you want to maintain? Here's a question for you. Do you want to maintain a status quo for the next 4 years after November? So 4.5 years. Or do you want something to change? And you've got to think, and so you got to ask yourself the question, who is the person I want to have in that office doing that? What am I experiencing under the current administration? Ryan Gale says, I think the verdict will put off enough Republicans to ruin it for Trump. Maybe. Then again, I'm seeing all kinds of things. And it's like, I think we see things within our bubbles too, Ryan. Me too. It's like I look, and everywhere I'm looking, everybody's like, this is increasing Trump's support. They took in nearly $55 million, which is record campaign fundraising from mostly smaller donors, which means it's your small average American sending in 15, 20, 50, 60, $100. And they raised $55 million in the 24 hours since the verdict. Things like that are going on. How do you think, my big question is, do you think this is going to blow over? Do you think, all the Biden administration wanted was for this conviction to happen? They just needed him to be convicted of something so they could use it. So here's the question. Do you think Biden is going to be our president for the next 4 years? Do you think they're going to choose do you know the smartest thing Biden could do is choose a new VP by Kamala. Nobody wants Kamala as president. So choose a new VP who is some young, shining star on the left in the Democratic Party. Maybe even somebody who's got a little more centrist views, and install him as the new vice president. And that guy will take over. 2 months into the new presidency, there it is. So do you think that would be a plan for Biden? Do you think they're going to pull him at the convention, the Democratic convention? Trump, what could Trump do? He hasn't named a VP yet. Do you think a VP choice really determines who you want to vote for? Have you ever voted because of somebody's VP choice? I don't think I ever have. Like when Reagan ran with Bush, I didn't know who the hell Bush was. I was voting for Reagan. Let's see. Steph says, but if you watch any of the immigration or spyglass reports, they're upping the amount of immigration flights that they're bringing into the U.S. That tells me they're going to let illegals vote. Yeah, they're going to try to get illegals voting. Yeah, Trump should pick Tulsi Gabbard as a running mate. I'm right there with you, Unleashed Jeremy Hansen. I agree with you on that. I like Tulsi Gabbard. Do I like everything about her? No. But I think she would be a fantastic choice. Bush assassinated Kennedy, says Field Guy. We're talking about John F. Kennedy. We're not talking about RFK Jr. Hey, we got JP coming in the background. Let's bring him up too. So, how you doing, Jason?
Doing all right. I tell you what. Here's one of the things I would love to see.
Yeah.
I would love to see them change how they do picking the VP and things like that.
Yeah.
Once upon a time in this country, you did not choose a VP. The loser of the election became the VP.
Right.
They should go back to that. One, you probably end up having a more civil election because, oh shit, I may have to work with this guy or gal for the next 4 years. You have the opportunity to get a more diverse view from leadership within the government, so you have a better balance of things going on. Because, look, as much as I hate the extreme woke left and all the stuff that they do, there are things over there that aren't inherently bad. Things that, in an ideal world, if we had replicators a la Star Trek, right, if we had the EMH a la Star Trek, things like that would be wonderful to have, and everybody could benefit from. But we don't have the things that are necessary to support all of those endeavors. Fiscal conservatism, trying to do things, balance budgets, all of that stuff are great things over here on this side. So, as an example, so if you have people in leadership, the two highest people in leadership from different camps finding a way to work together, I don't know. Maybe some of this bullshit.
I don't know. Could you see Bush and Trump? What if Trump won? Would not Bush? We were just talking Bush in the chat room. Biden and Trump. What if Trump won? Would he want to have Biden as his vice president? That's an incumbency. Was there a different rule on that one?
But see, that's the thing, though, is I don't think it was. I don't think it was a thing of a matter of whether you wanted them or not. That's just how the election worked out.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Back in
the way back day. Back when we were closer to our founding fathers and the original intent and everything. With much more still in your face. So, like, I don't know, man. I get tired of this stuff. I
do too.
I think you're going to see a lot of people probably who would have been Biden or third party voters go to Trump because of this conviction. Because there's plenty of people who, have been nonviolent felons who've applied to get all of their stuff back, who have worked and give that debt. And then it's like, and they've probably been on charges that were, pardon the expression, because it's totally unintended, but trumped up. Those kinds of things being like, holy crap, no, I'm going to go over here. Why? Because now I have something that resonates with, because I went through this experience. Now this guy's going through this experience, etc. I think it'd be interesting to see just how many people do what. I do have to. I understand where you're coming from on the third party vote thing.
Yeah,
I totally do, but God, principles are a huge thing.
I know principles are huge, and that's the challenge with that. Is my principles tell me I would vote for this third party person, yet I know that if I do, I am either peeling votes away from another candidate that would get close to what I believe, but not.
Or you're peeling votes away from a candidate you don't believe in. It's Schrodinger's vote.
Yes, Schrodinger's vote. However, it all depends on what the third party I'm voting for, out of principle, stands for. Is he going to be viewed as somebody who's peeling away votes from the other guy or peeling votes away from your party?
Well,
kind
you
of
know, and
thing.
that's the other thing that gets interesting with this is we have so many of the don't vote third party. All you're doing is stealing votes from us. Well, the other votes from us.
Right.
Most of your third party voters are, you know, probably weren't going to vote for either one of those anyway, so they're not stealing anything.
Right. So, out of principle, if you vote for somebody out of principle,
Mhm.
and you know that person's not going to win, but it will affect the electorate, so you have to ask yourself,
Yeah.
if I know out of principle that the
But
person
see,
I'm voting for isn't really going to win, but I'm
here's the other thing
trusting
too,
my
though.
principles, what is your principle about who's running the country after the election?
That exact argument, though, right, is the thing that keeps people.
I know.
It
Keeps people
prevents
from
people
voting for
from
third
doing it.
parties.
Right.
But
Because they
there's
sit
not
there and they
enough
panic with it.
groundswell for a third party candidate.
Right. And it's
You know, that's a big, long and hard. I was yelling at my son the other night about something. He was sassing. Don't you talk to your mom and me that way. And I said, you better think long and hard about what you're doing. And he stared at me for a second and he started snickering, going, I go, what? He goes, you said long and hard. And so we both started laughing.
oh Lord.
Said,
But
you're
you
still
know,
in trouble, but that was funny.
that's just one of those things though, where you look at that and you're like, in a way, it's voter suppression. That's probably more voter suppression. You know, it's just as much voter suppression as it is with the, you know, trying to say that, you know, getting an ID and having to use an ID is voter suppression.
And that's BS.
You're looking at it from the left side, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's to sit there and which is worse almost, right? Hey, we don't want to do photo IDs because it's voter suppression and this, that, and the other thing, right? But then,
right.
then you have the people being like, no, you shouldn't make that choice you believe in.
Yeah.
Like there's something inherently fucked up about that.
You know, it's like I hail to the old biblical verse when you say that says, you say you believe, well, the devils believe too, and they tremble. So belief in a certain system that I want to see put in place because I have principles to vote for a third party, but I know is not going to win. But I'm hopefully building something. So by the time I'm in my 80s,
I want to specify something with that, Scotty. I want to kind of clarify something.
All right.
So
welcome, Josh, by the way.
In the last elections, I have voted third party. Okay. All right. Matter of principle, there is a problem with this how deeply set this two system thing is, and you can't get an actual choice. You're either this or you're that. Okay, it's a choice, but you know what I mean. There's no variety of choice.
I do.
And for the most part, the person that I voted for, I have agreed with the majority of their stuff, their standpoints on things, etc. It's not like they're off like Ralph Nader, you know, the Corvair is deadly, right? You know, like it's unsafe at any speed for anybody who doesn't get that reference.
Sure.
But you know, I'm not out there doing that, but I am going after the principle.
Hello.
Hey, Josh, do you hear us?
I'm trying to get the mic fixed.
Okay, we can hear you just fine. We got you 5x5, man.
Gotcha.
Well, I can't. I'm getting it fixed.
Here, I'm going to put you on mute. You wave at me when you
Y'all
think you're ready.
Yeah, I have you.
So I would ask.
So if it was something where third party, if it was something where third party,
I can hear you, Josh.
None of the candidates were worth anything. Then I would go back to my I can either choose one or the other.
Right.
But if there's somebody who actually has values and principles, and isn't like a whack job, it's like you do see with a lot of the third party people, it's like what?
Yeah.
then I will be forced to go back to in a way. But if there is somebody who is viable, like in terms of
viable,
if they're viable in
here's the
terms of
thing.
their principles and everything like that,
isn't that what the primary process is supposed to weed out for us? If you've got 12 candidates on this side of the aisle that are vying for visibility and the vote, that's where you go, oh, look who rose to the top. Because it really has to come down. It really almost has to come down to, one side or the other. Now, it's too bad it's just Republican and Democrat all the time.
Well, right,
But,
and that's the thing is it always has been. So why doesn't somebody else out? Somebody get the money up together, whatever, get the marketing going.
Yeah,
buy the time slot on TV and do all right. We're going to do the third party debates.
See,
Third
you
party
just nailed
primary.
it.
Be like,
You just nailed
hey,
it.
right, yeah. There is an act, and the
Media.
DNC and the RNC have been literally actively pushing out any chance of that going on. How many times have you seen an independent get right? And that's bullshit.
Yeah.
That's bullshit. This is the company that's supposed to be the land of the free, the home of the brave, the principles of right and wrong.
None of that's real in the real world. We all know that. There's the ideology and the idealism,
but that doesn't mean we shouldn't strive for it every day. Like,
right.
I lived my life by a set of principles that were more better defined and refined when I went into the Army, with the Army values, everything that goes in there and stuff like that, right? Mm-hmm. I internalized that. Did I slip up with things? Did I not do a great job with things? Yeah, sure. Why? I'm human. But you should strive for that every day. We should strive for that. People need to step up and say, well, they do the whole the network thing or whatever it was.
Yeah.
I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
We all are. I mean,
right.
We're all Americans.
Yeah,
I mean, what the fuck? I mean, that's what we should strive to be. I mean,
right. That's what we should strive for, living those principles and values.
Yeah.
But we don't. Government should do that by default.
Well, by default, yeah, exactly.
Like that should just happen.
You took that out of You took it out of my mouth. Before I could say
it should happen. The only problem that we're seeing is that all of us who are grown-ups now have come to realize that our system doesn't work on idealism. It works on business principles, which are you got to take out the competition and we've got to get to the top. Our side is offering the best possible thing. So we're not going to we're going to do everything we can to disallow a third party from making it to the top.
Right.
We're going to take them out. We're going to do what we need to do. And could you imagine what an election would look like if all three parties, let's say you had three candidates and all three looked at each other and said, my opponents are worthy gentlemen or women, and they're all good people. You could vote for any one of us. You just have to decide which one of us you like better.
Do you understand
the trash
aneurysm that the world would have collectively?
They would fall apart.
I would do that if let's say Tulsi Gabbard had been the Democratic nominee last time. I might have gone, you know what? I'm very tempted to vote for Tulsi Gabbard because I like her.
Yes. I probably would have voted for her.
Yeah, I would have too. But see, so I can cross, and I'm not a Republican to begin with. I vote Republican because that tends to be my only decent choice. I can't rightfully vote for a Joe Biden right now for many, many, many reasons. And I wouldn't do it just to keep Trump out of office if I didn't like him. You have to stop. This is what let's I want to address Ryan Gale's question here, but I want to talk about this point. We talk an awful lot on this show about the metaphysics of life, the spirituality, and all of that. We've talked about being awake.
Right.
And I've
Woke,
also talked about being woke is not the same thing
yeah,
as being awake.
be awake.
So
Yeah.
here is the difference. If you are woke, that's a political mindset. If you are
Yep.
awake, it means that, okay, you are seeing things for what they are. You think differently. So if I don't like the other candidate, am I going to here, let's put it in terms of Trump and jail time and all of that, and we'll get to what Ryan just asked here. But I look at Trump and I ask, am I going to resist Trump or resist Biden on the basis of all these other things? Am I going to open my eyes and say there's more here? That's why I've always said about Biden. I'm not being very clear. Let me articulate this a little better. I've always said about Biden from the beginning that I don't think Biden is a bad person. That's what I said at the very beginning. I said, I believe, and of course, we didn't know a lot of stuff about him at the time. But I said, Biden is just somebody, I disagree with his political ideology, and that will force me to not vote for him. But he's a guy that has done his time. I said, he built his legacy as the vice president of the United States. And he can sit back, and he's becoming older. Let him retire and go fishing. But they pulled him out of that. And I don't know, whatever promises they made, this is that we must win at any cost, because they saw him as the person that could stand against Trump because of his record. And now we're finding that even though his record is abysmal after 3.5 years, they're still saying that he's the guy they want to have there to take down Trump. But they can't, so they have to make sure Trump got I was going to say evicted, the verdict against him. This had to happen. All this lawfare stuff had to happen for the left to be able to promote the reelection of their incumbent president, who is a failure. He might have done a couple of good things for people from their personal ideology. I said, well, I asked people very honestly, what do you think he has done? Well, the student loan thing and the this and that, and they bring all this stuff up, and I go, is that good for the country, though? Is it good for a president of the United States to say when he says we've canceled people's school debt?
So was it constitutional?
Right, that's something they're paying the debt for people. So where's that money coming from? All of you are paying young minds full of mush that went through school, racked up $200,000 in educational fees, and now
they'll become legal fees.
and have their student loan debt. Now we're paying for them. Why? They chose that route. That's like saying I chose to buy this house that's worth $325,000. And because I made that choice, now the economy's bad and that's hurting me, or I lost my job, or I can't find a good job, so I can't continue to sustain this house. Maybe the government should buy this house for me and let me stay in it, not kick me out.
Nope.
It's the same kind of thinking. So this is where I look at all this.
It's a victim mindset. But see, here's the problem, though, right? Relieving some of that debt doesn't solve the problem. It eases pressure on those people a little bit on the demographic goods, which is all well and good, right?
Yeah,
that's great and stuff, but it doesn't fix the root cause issue. And you saw all of this stuff start happening when they started federally backing.
1960s.
They started federally backing student loans.
Yes.
Now they've basically given, students the same thing that veterans with a VA home loan earned through service and sacrifice, right? And by the way, with the GI Bill, paid $1,200 in the first year, over the course of the first year of their service, right? So it was a system that was paid into starting off. If they attacked if they went after the fact that it's federally backed, now if you eliminate that, now the lenders have more skin in the game.
Yep.
And they've got to sit there and be like, hold on, wait a minute. You want to get a degree in what? Underwater basket weaving? I'm sorry. Yeah. How are you going to use this to pay back this loan?
Underwater basket weaving.
Right. And that's where the issue is. You got to go after. We need to start attacking root causes rather than just slapping band-aids on things.
Yes.
Well, can I go back to Biden for just 1 minute?
Sure.
That's the reason I call it.
Just don't vote for him.
Voter suppression, Scotty. Voter suppression.
Voter suppression.
You shouldn't do that.
Yes, we can't do that.
You tell them make the right choice.
Everybody make the right choice.
Don't vote for Biden.
No, just say make the right choice.
I'm sorry, I don't understand you. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
1994? Would he vote? He was the co-sponsor for the crime bill that put pretty much all the African Americans in jail. I'll say Americans in jail, and they wonder why he's losing support now with that group of people.
Well, and I think also because of social media, because people get more access to things, which is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. I think you also have a voter base that's less in the dark informationally.
Yeah.
And so you have people like technology. Technology has come down in price in such a way that it is accessible to anyone across any demographic, across any kind of pay scale that they're at or station in life. And it doesn't matter if it's black, white, Hispanic, Asian, Native, aliens from space, whatever. It doesn't matter, right? They have access to things, and people sit there and they're going to sit there and look at that information and hold up, wait. People who are actually capable of thinking for themselves and take the time to do it will say, hold on, wait. We have problems, and this guy's just causing more of these problems, or this group of people is just causing more problems within the government. I think that's a big part of why you see that swing.
Big
Let
government.
Me welcome Professor Bauer officially to the show.
Well, I waved that.
There for a few
minutes. I
know there's a lot to weigh in on.
I knew I just had to get everything in before the professor opened up.
Throw this one out fresh for the professor and everybody sitting here and everybody who's got an opinion. Ryan Gale in the chat room asked, do you think the judge will put Trump in jail?
I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do that.
There's no way.
You'd be surprised if they try? Did you say?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, wouldn't be
because think about that. If you do that, you've now completely eliminated your candidate. They're sitting. That's going to be an interesting one, because
now should that be something the judge considers if he's doing the right thing?
Right?
Should he even consider politics at all? Well, the other side will look at this as if
it's not just about
Biden. So what's he going to do?
It's not just about simple politics, Scotty. It's also about the fact that
I know
you gotta have
if you do this, and if you look at what everybody else typically has been slapped with in terms of fines or any kind of sentencing or anything like that, all right, putting him in jail,
you gotta have
and all of this stuff. Now you have just crossed that line. You risk crossing that line, like taking a big step over it into like Banana Republic third world type crap.
Mm-hmm.
And if the judge is a smart man, he is going to consider what are the second and third order effects. Now, I will always say nobody is above the law, right? No one is above the law. If you have done the crimes and you've gone through the appellate process and you still get convicted and you're sitting there, you have done the crimes, you should do the time, pay the fine, whatever the consequence is, right? That is what is correct. But if we cross that line into Banana Republic type stuff, where you have, in third world country type stuff, where you have people actively imprisoning their opponent to take their opponent out, we're in for some really, really interesting times.
I was going to ask, what would you think red states AGs would start doing? I mean,
say that again.
What would you think AGs and red states would start doing? I mean,
what an AG?
Yeah, the attorney generals and red states.
Okay. General. Sorry, acro speak. I don't always deal with it well. Acronym. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of unknown of how things would go down, because it could go one way or the other. It could be like, okay, this is it. The law was this way. We did it, and we did it in as much of a non-political fashion as we could. And this person did this thing, and therefore consequence.
Oh, okay. Here, Ryan Gale says, the way Trump attacked the judge and his family, I can see him throwing the book at Trump. But let me ask the question. Then wouldn't that be the judge just being, okay, this is personal now?
Yes.
Is that the way he's supposed
exactly
to?
What that is.
Professor, he'll be back, I'm sure. Isn't that just then the judge acting like some guy on a street corner? You insulted my wife, so right. I'm going to throw the book at you. Isn't the judge in his position to be higher than that?
Right.
That's what he's supposed to be.
You have to take out, when you are in public service of that nature, whether whether you're a judge, whether you're a senator, whether you're president, whatever, you.
I mean, that almost sounds like you could say,
in the oath of office,
I was going to give you probation, but
right.
The way you insulted me in this courtroom, I don't think I can do that for you anymore. I think I'm going to throw you in jail. Now, so could the judge do something political and say, well, we're going to put you in jail today and your probation starts in 4 days? Well, that would be totally transparent too, as they're keeping him from the convention.
Right. Same way.
Well, but that's the thing is honestly, does he have to be at the convention?
He doesn't really need to be at the convention. Could he from jail do television? Well, if they allow him to.
Do you know how that would upset a lot of people? And that would just fire up the base.
Scheduling the sentencing phase 3 days before the convention, is that a political move, or was that, that's just the date that came up on the docket? Do they need to consider the defendant now that he's technically, legally guilty of 34 felonies? Do they have to do anything special for him? He does still have, because of his status, he still has Secret Service.
Right.
So there's the big questions. This has never been done before. That's why there's all these questions around it.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I really loved about the military. There were regulations that prescribed everything, and you adhered to the regulations.
Yes.
Regulations. There's no.
You have to go by the book. Yeah.
There's no room for, or very little room for, well, the regulation states, that sentencing has to be carried out within 15 days, right? It'll put things in there within, so you fall into a scope of, but like there's a rigidity there. So it's like, I would love to see more things like that, where there is clearly defined, no questions.
One thing we've got to keep in mind too, this whole trial for Trump and the guilty charge, the verdict,
Yeah.
This
They
has,
held.
and people aren't thinking
They,
about this. This
they
isn't just
held.
about Trump. This has set a legal precedent in the United States now that
There you go.
any former POTUS can be brought up on any prosecution charge.
Oh,
If
man.
Trump got brought up on expired misdemeanors,
Right. You know,
what
maybe
can they bring up anybody else on?
maybe you know,
Legal precedents means something.
if that it maybe in certain regards it's too bad that old Hillary didn't get elected, because then if she didn't get reelected and was trying to run again,
Yeah.
we could put her ass in jail for the massive amount of things that she has done.
Sure. Well, the
Like-
news just came out yesterday about the $8,000 that she just got fined and her campaign got fined by the campaign finance
Oh yeah.
organization committee.
That's it.
Did you know that
$8,000.
the Steele dossier,
Yeah.
that's been debated for 4 or 5 years now and
Right.
looked into legally. Well, she funded the Steele dossier, which they have found out to be a fake.
Yeah.
She funded it and used it against Trump in her campaign.
Mm-hmm.
So is that
And-
campaign interference? And then
Yes.
she listed the expense for that. Over $1 million she paid for that out of campaign funds, listed as legal services. So they said she now did exactly what Trump just is supposedly facing jail for.
Technically, it should have been a FARA violation because she enlisted a foreign
Right.
agent to do it. So
Right. So all of that, and she gets fined $8,000, and the Democratic the Democratic Convention, the Democratic Committee, campaign committee, whatever they call it, is being charged $100,000. So
Mr. Bauer,
where is her facing jail time?
we're
Hold on,
gonna
wait.
have
Let's get something out of the prof, because he hasn't been able to get a word in edgewise.
Yeah,
Wow, how did we do that?
I don't know.
He's waiting. He is like,
This morning
waiting.
show has been rigged against the professor. It's
That's
a
right.
political.
he's just waiting. We peel his can lid up.
Well, first of all, good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning
and
again.
Good morning.
everyone out there. I have just started my first Java install. I'm actually on the second install, so
Right on.
I'm warming up to the words that I want to toss onto the table here. So
You're saying you installed Java and you're getting ready to install an update.
yeah, I'm on my second update of that, of making sure that it's current. So I have this to say about all the things you guys have been talking about. Number one, systems and processes are afoot, and I will explain the importance of that. Second is the law of unintended consequences.
Mhm.
And the third, I will quote one of the most brilliant minds of the last 100 years, Mr.
Field guy?
Carlin, when he said, if voting worked, they wouldn't let you do it.
There it is.
So what I'm saying is it'll start with systems and processes. And by the way, this is all multiple movies on one screen. Okay.
Mhm.
So all of the little nuances, who's done what, who's going to do what they have done, those are all just, in my opinion, all of the scatter and the flotsam and jetsam that they're throwing out there to keep the confusion alive. Because with confusion, chaos enters, and with chaos, then all of the craniums collapse, and we're seeing a lot of that. So, system and processes. Okay, you guys were talking earlier about, it's two-party. Why can't what's the problem with the third party, and why do we have all of this consternation in actually getting an election done? And that, to me, is the result of a system that's designed for obfuscation and corruption. What do I mean by that? There is no way, any way, shape, or form, and we've seen this from the 2020, and we saw some of it in 2016, but there is no way that our system is auditable. You cannot go in and guarantee that there's any transparency, first of all.
True.
And second of all, you can't go in and prove any of that because it's so convoluted. Which goes to the point of Carlin's quip about, if voting mattered, they wouldn't let you do it.
Right.
Well, it matters because they have control of a system that is corrupt and doesn't have any transparency. There's no accountability. So just even the thought of having some kind of election that is fair and transparent and clear is not, it can't happen because the system won't allow that to happen. And that's one of the reasons that you see other countries where they might have 10, 20 different candidates and parties, and they're able to execute their elections and get them done in 24 hours and have everything counted. Well, what's going on there? For third world countries, they sure seem to have that figured out, because you rarely see any of the bullshit that we are going through.
I can give you a partial answer to that.
Elections in other countries. Now, right now, one of the more important things I think people are not paying attention to that they should is there's over a dozen national elections going on over this period of time. And right now, Mexico has got 2 women that are vying for the presidency, right?
Yes.
There
are all kinds of parties vying for it.
Milei out of Argentina just met with Don Jr. in somewhere in the Caribbean. And this guy went in, basically a Trump model. I'm going to go in and cut the crap because there's far too much crap in the system. And that goes back to the fact that the system's broken. You can't expect anything fair or have any kind of credibility with the way that the system is. So the system's broke. It doesn't matter who you vote for.
Thank you.
Stepping away.
By the way, you all have one of these? Oh, thank you for bringing my coffee down.
Wow, dude. That's special. Our system is broke. It's corrupt. It's not transparent. It's not auditable. So you can't have an election that has any credibility to it whatsoever. The unintended consequences. Let me just drop a couple of nuggets on that.
Unintended consequences.
The whole idea of what appears to be going on in the political system that's now hijacked the judicial system to execute their whims and their desires is exactly what Scotty was mentioning a minute ago. This precedent.
Here you go, Ryan. Listen to this.
And this precedent in the legal system can now be turned around and used on the other side when the other side is not the ones in power. So they don't really. There seems to be a penchant and a predictability that these people do not think in systems and processes. They are focused on these short-term goals and the immediate satisfaction of whatever their will and whim seems to be for whatever emotion is fueling it for the day. They don't think ahead. They don't look forward. They don't have this, well, if we do this, what'll happen there? Back to the question of will Trump get jail time? There's 2 things that I think are afoot in that are in a directionally trending direction. And that is, if the judge and the group that pulled off this latest conviction of all of this nefarious shit, they went to the mat and they got themselves, 34-0. The idea of them being able to go all the way and go to incarceration is totally in their wheelhouse. It would make no sense for them not to do that because, again, they got a short-term goal, not a long-term perspective.
Right.
So that's on that side. On the Trump side, I mean, based on the results of their current shenanigans and how the backfire has happened with the support that's gone towards the person they've gone after, having Trump in an orange jumpsuit as Orange Man behind bars would be the greatest meme of all time. It will be an image in infamy that would then, I think, not only solidify any potential landslide, which has been directionally trending again up to this point, it will make it of epic proportions.
But now, if the judge decides the case based on that information and therefore just gives Trump probation, wouldn't he be making then a political decision to say, well, this is what it will do? Or is that what the judge needs to take into account? He cannot rule on the basis of his personal ideological belief. But then again, he was put into place because of his personal political ideological belief. these people are elected because people. Well,
He's-
was he elected or was he appointed?
He's appointed.
He's appointed by that mindset because he has this mindset.
Well, it's
so-
all political. Therefore, there's nothing from my perspective that would prohibit or inhibit them from taking the same political path that they've been on.
Right.
And
So the
it's
smart
just, it's
decision-
in their ideology. It's in the way that they think about the world view. So we have multiple movies going on one screen that is using a system that and processes that would work if they were adhered to, but the people involved in the systems have corrupted and abused the systems.
Yes.
And then you have this ideology that doesn't think ahead. There isn't a planning or a projection perspective of where.
That's not true. That's not true. How dare you say that?
So
how dare you say that? Because by 2035, we're all going to have electric cars. Or was it
right,
2050?
well, now you're talking about the great reveal.
Or was it? I don't. It was one of those times 20 years from now or something like that where we all have electric cars.
I'm just waiting for the transporter
There's
to be
long-term
developed
planning. What are you talking about?
This is
heavy sarcasm.
This is the yes. This is the Jetsons meets Soylent Green. Okay,
that's right.
It's people.
So I think that what we're seeing is on purpose. I actually think that the stuff that's going on against the orange man, bad, blue, or whatever, is not only been planned by the folks that are executing it, but I think that the folks that are being executed against are also going, really? Bring me some of that, because we are looking at the long term. We expect that your foolishness and your fuckery is going to be found out on a wide scale. And I was on a show last night. We were talking about this, and we went on for 4 hours about it. And it was just everybody's perspective was a very interesting, unique approach to how is it that this can be so blatant and so obvious, yet so done.
Yeah.
And that is because a lot of it, I think, in general, is what we have is a population that's on the awakening side of reality. In other words, what I refer to as the rise of the pissed off peeps. And even those who have had complete disdain for Trump are looking at their bullshit meters are pegging in the red on a regular basis. And that bullshit meter is an inherent natural part of our composition, the way that we function. So when your bullshit meter's pegging all the time and you've never really even paid attention to your bullshit meter that much, you'd see it when it kind of goes to the middle, but it's like a whatever. Now it's being forced into the red, and people are seeing, even when they are not paying attention, they're having to see stuff that just doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. So that's another part of the law of unintended consequences. It's a part of the not being able to think past your nose and see past your face. I mean, these people have really, they've gone after something that is going to implode on them, because it just logically makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I tell you what, there's
anything that happens with Trump on this is just in Trump's, it's just another checkbox for him. And they don't realize that. They think that what they are doing is diminishing him, and they're doing the exact opposite. Again, an example of the law of unintended consequences.
Well, and I think, actually, I wanted to go back. You had mentioned something about, earlier with the third world countries, and they seem to get it right. They seem to do everything. I think there's a part of that. And I'm probably very biased in my opinion on it because of my own personal experiences, right? And exposures to things. I think a big part of that is that they don't take the ability to do that for granted like we do here. When you sit there and you are literally having to, okay, and I wasn't physically involved in it, but I was in the meetings where the planning got discussed, where the scheduling got discussed, where, hey, we're assigning this, that, and the other thing. When you're sitting out there actively putting gun trucks around a voter station to protect people who are trying to vote,
They know that a massive firefight could erupt at this polling station, but they still go in there. They still line up and they still come out with their thumb dyed purple. All right. They don't take it for granted. We do. We operate in such a microcosm in terms of our own view of the world on a larger scale here in the States that people can't be bothered to vote.
Yeah.
You know, like, and that's one of those things.
Well, they can't be bothered, but you got to make sure it's available on the internet for them.
Right. You know, it's one of those things where I think there's a lot of it in that regard. They value it still. They value it. They haven't been fed the rhetoric constantly through social media, through the news, through a bunch of stupid pundits, you know, politicians saying dumb crap that, you know, about, well, it's not like your vote matters anyway, because it's not a direct election or it's not a whatever. But the fact of the matter is it does. But when you have this line that has consistently been fed for 50 years, right? Probably, because you really started seeing stuff about like the Electoral College, for instance, really start coming up in like probably the 60s to early 70s. Is probably where that stuff really kind of started rumbling through.
And we really need the Electoral College.
We do, and it's part of the system of checks and balances. Yes. You know, and that's. I think there should be some
other stuff to want to eliminate checks and balances. There's
for you. That's Electoral College. That's a show for a different talk.
It's a show for a different day. It absolutely is. It's its own different. I think there needs to be some refinements, and I think that needs to probably go down to, like, you have a state like New York, for instance. The bulk of the state of New York is actually very agricultural, very rural, but yet you have New York City defining every last law and regulation of the entirety of the state. There needs to be something, whether it's a reduction in electorates out of certain areas in certain states just to make it fair for the rural people, or some sort of federal intervention that comes down and says, hey, the city can't determine the fate of the entire state.
Well, and the easiest way to describe it is just saying, if we didn't have an electoral system, New York City and Los Angeles would determine all elections.
Right. Yeah, between New York City, Los Angeles, Detroit, Chicago, all of that.
If voting mattered, we wouldn't be allowed to do it. So,
but it's I think that goes back to the fact that they don't take it for granted like we do. We've gotten to a point where we've taken it for granted.
Well, one of the reasons I think for that, JP, is the fact that these other countries are more homogenous in their population. For example, when you were in Argentina, they're all basically Argentines. Japan, they're all Japanese, etc. The problem with the U.S. as being one of its most powerful things is that melting pot that we are is exactly what we are. Now, the problem that we're having, in my opinion, is that there's the people that are adding the ingredients. The people that are adding the ingredients and stirring the pot are doing so to make the pot untenably inedible. And that has caused a lot of the consternation of the multiple movies on one screen, because now you have people that have taken a system. And this is one of my points that I think is very important. If we took, going back to systems and processes, if we took the Constitution, the articles, the Bill of Rights, and all of the amendments, and we went through them sentence by sentence, and we went back to determining what those sentences mean and how will they be adjudicated for the dispensation to the populace to act accordingly, we wouldn't have a tenth of the shit that we've got right now.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem is that the system is fine for the most part. It's still one of the best on the planet when it is executed as designed and as written and as put forth for everyone to adhere to. The problem is we have a bunch of peeps that are in there screwing up and abusing the system. They've stretched it beyond whatever original lines that were defined. They've used and come up with all kinds of crafty crap and primarily in words and ideologies,
Yes.
to twist the way that it is implemented and executed. So
That,
those people are the ones that need to be basically, and Morgan, you're right. There needs to be they have to eliminate this whole career bureaucrat model. People cannot be and should not be in any kind of governmental system for longer than some accepted term, because once it becomes a career, you then become entrenched and you are seriously going to go in and take your shot at screwing the system in your favor. So if we had somebody that went in and said, on day one, I'm going to have the Congress convene and we're going to read our founding documents line by line. And we're going to go back to that, and we're going to eliminate anything that causes friction in the implementation of said document and the rules. The whole idea that we are basically a republic, not a democracy. We have the rule of the people is at the state level, not at the federal level.
That's right.
All of these things are
They forget
fundamental, yet they have been completely turned on their head. So this consternation and conflict that goes on with all in the conversations in the communities is purposely done to create that confusion and that chaos.
And
why? Because if they went back to these documents and read them, they'd see that what's going on is not supposed to be there. It's been illegally abused, and that is our biggest problem.
And this show, I will say, we did a couple of shows on the constitutional building of the federal government and what this country did. The states created the federal government.
Well,
Therefore,
I was just about
the states have power over the federal government.
That's right.
The federal government does not have power over the states.
Right.
Now, the states have entered into you could call it a contract with the federal government, saying we're letting the federal government take the lead, but the states can at any moment snap that training collar and say, no, federal government, you cannot go there. And
they can, yes, but is the will there?
We've grown into a country that doesn't know this. Nobody is aware of this.
I was going to say,
the federal government rules us, and it doesn't. We rule the federal government.
The states have then gave over their rights to the federal government, just like Congress has gave over rights to the president that they never should have.
Yep.
And I mean, you just go up the ladder. I mean,
you're exactly right there.
I was trying to find my book, the Federalist Papers, but I've got it. I've got them all. But
well, see, people don't realize that the articles in the Constitution are designed to define what the Fed can do and cannot. And that is one of the most important parts of just the fundamental construct of why initially and still,
that's why the
in my
10th Amendment
opinion,
is
going
so
forward,
important.
These documents will and should survive this bullshit. And so and once we go back to those,
you're correct, Randall.
Those documents were defined and delineated. But the problem is we've got a bunch of ideological numbnuts that have created a generation of kidiots who don't know squat about what's going on. And they're encouraged not to go figure out what's going on, because we have on the last 30 years, the whole thing of what we grew up with, which was how to think, has been replaced with what to think.
Well, this is what I loved about Rush Limbaugh. And he said this tongue in cheek, but he said, I am here, 15 hours every week, so you don't have to think. I will think for you.
I was going to say, Professor, you need to do informatica about this. I know you did one last night, but
yeah, I mean, the thing is that information is the new. We are in the information age officially.
Right.
Information is the key. It is the king. It is the gold. It is replacing oil and all of the other precious things that people have tried to sequester. And and poured over for the last century or two. That information, the information and the systems around that information are coming online, which are going to give the key components.
Yes.
Transparency and trust have been eroded because the people that are in the systems that should work have gone in and screwed with it and mucked it all up.
Well, you know, here's something.
Transparency and auditability on anything that's being done is what's missing right now in the systems. And it's designed that way so that you can't go in and find the information and prove something.
And see, and that's one of the things, though. It's unofficially designed that way,
Yeah.
right? Like,
well, I don't know what you mean by unofficial. But
what I mean by unofficial is that's not stuff that's set forth in the Constitution, that we're going to make this really hard to access, that we're going to make it so you can't find any of this, like that kind of thing. You know,
no, it wasn't designed. It was designed for the opposite, so that you could have the accountability.
Thinking of what is mandated and so on, it just led my mind on a totally different vein, but it's been brought up here. Why does Chuck Schumer think he's the shit? Because
I'm not.
Why do any of them think they're the shit?
Lately, that isn't so politically motivated, not for the good of the country. What's he doing? He's trying to lead a charge now to get rid of Trump's 3 appointees, or well, one is not Trump. Maybe some of them are Trump's.
I tell you what, it's because he can read off the script really well with his glasses sitting right about here. And looking over it. That his skill to do that. That's what makes him the shit. He just does that so well.
You know,
it's 2 words. It's 2 words. It's mental illness.
Here's the thing, JP. I can do that too.
Right. Exactly.
I want you to know that.
But to me,
if I didn't have contacts in, I could do it also. Well, I guess I could do it even without contacts. I just wouldn't be able to read.
I've got my cataracts fixed. So
to me, all of the shit that's going on that people are adopting and cranking up the volume and velocity is from mental illness. There is a significant, and people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to realize it, but the mental illness, and this is what, going back to your Limbaugh reference, Scotty, one of the things that he used to bounder on about in the 90s and early 2000s with liberalism was a mental disorder.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I think we're seeing. People that are in that camp, that subscribe to that ideology, when you look at them, not only do they don't look well, they don't look like they're people that are doing well. They look unhealthy. And then when they open their mouths and they start talking about the things that they espouse, they have an unhinged quality. It's like, have you really stopped and thought about what you're saying? Have you had any introspection, self-examination, any quiet time to have a good think about what it is that you think about? Because if you did, you would see that there's so many holes and so many issues with the how you have gone through the mental gymnastics to come to that conclusion, which goes back to, Josh, thanks for bringing up the informatics. The biggest thing, in my opinion, is to ask questions. If you're not asking questions, then you are adopting answers that other people want you to have and going to the what to think model. And when you ask questions, that's where you start finding the transparency, the accountability, the auditability. If you can't ask questions, then that's when the system is working against you. And if you're told that you can't ask this, you can't behave this way, you can't judge, you can't offend, you can't, which are all parts of the way that we function, by the way, you can't get rid of those things. But the fact is that information is the key. Going back to what I was saying, we are in the information age. We are about to see the great reveal. JP, the information that is going to be unveiled is going to
just tell us what it is already, man.
And that's what I'm trying to do.
No, you're not. You're just talking about the reveal. That's it.
The information behind the veil that is being pulled back is what is going to change the way everybody thinks and acts with the systems that we have. And that it's like moving molasses. What Scott Adams calls the law of slow moving disaster.
So let me ask, all this stuff we're talking about, this is great. This is great. People will go, oh, this is great Sunday morning fodder. I like this. Now I got to go. I'm going fishing and I got to go mow the lawn. and I got to go to work tomorrow, and on it goes. On any of this stuff, how do we take all this stuff and make it be something that, like we used to say in ministry, and I brought this up before, why is it that people would go to church on Sunday morning and they'd be all moved emotionally to do better, to do this, to take care of that, and then they go home and watch the game, they go to work on Monday, and they come back next Sunday, and it's the same thing all over again, and it ends as soon as they leave the building. So what is it that we do? What are we supposed to do to implement this? You just said it's as slow as molasses. Yeah, we can't go out today and get on our phone or get on the internet and make a change. We can contribute to, I see it like, here's the change up here, and there's all this little filtering stuff that keeps working up.
I tell you one thing. I tell you one thing we could do, and there's probably people out there who wouldn't like it, but if you want to, let's just take something that would be relatively simple. Relatively, okay. The look at things with the tax system and everybody wanting to tax the rich, right? So how about this? How about we better incentivize doing good shit, right? Like, tell you what, we know we've had something capped on what you can report or what you can do, whatever, to claim on your taxes, but we're going to change some of those numbers up. And now, if you donate specifically to independent cancer research that allows people that aren't governed by, profit margins with big pharma and things like that, you can do that. Put specificity to it, and rather than they have the title of 5013C, or they have the title of this or like that. Put some hardline specificity and action behind some of those things. And then you might see people,
I agree with that.
Corporations, etc. Make better financial decisions in terms of donating. And then
I agree with that in principle, JP. But the problem is the definition of good. It's just like the definition of fair.
That's why you clearly define things.
All of that is individual and it's unique, and you can't implement something across the board that everybody's going to agree to. Now, this goes back to what I was saying. If we go back to the Constitution, everything you need for not only guardrails but incentivized action is in that document. Yeah. And the problem is that it's not only being ignored, but it's been manipulated, mangled, and nefariously fucked with for decades. So, Scotty, to your question, what's actionable out of this country we can leave here? Well, first of all, to me, actionable is having this conversation first.
Sure.
Having this conversation and being able to have it and share it is the first thing that you can do. But to me, the second thing and the most important thing is going back to my point about we're in an information age, which begs questioning. The data and the information requires questioning. And if you're not questioning and asking questions of those who have gotten an overly excited and extended, seriously clenched emotional content, you have to not only avoid it, but where there is a crack in the clench to go after somebody and try to help them. That's a visual for you there, JP. Is that you cannot allow yourself to get caught up in the emotional content. You have to be neutral in your search and questioning of the information, so that you can help other people see that, when you get all clenched about that concept and you think that it is the end all and be all, have you really thought about it? In fact, one of the ways I think that is the best ways to combat some of this nuttery that's out there is to embrace and magnify. When somebody comes up to you and says, it's like the whole thing about whether it's gender or it's, the race or the social economic delineations of the victim and the oppressors and all this other crap.
No more blah, blah, blah.
There is some real simple questions that you can ask in a very non-emotional way that will cause a pause And what needs to happen is a pause in these causes so that people can actually stop and think.
Right.
Does this actually make any sense?
Well,
So
no more rushing bills through. No more rushing bills through.
Yeah,
we got a 3,000-page bill.
I also, on that note, I want to see single item bills. I think we need to pass a bill that says all legislation should be single item. You cannot,
but then they're going to argue that we can't further progress and change and development and betterment and helping these things if we do that because we won't have the time. Well, maybe you should have thought of that before you.
Right.
Technically, that's the way it's supposed to be. But
so how do we move that? We say, as the people, this is what we want to see our legislators do. You work for us. You know what they all do to us?
They, I was gonna say the way everybody could start would be locally. Start with your district attorneys. Start with your school boards.
But you know what you're talking about, Josh? Individual citizens doing work.
Right.
Yes,
people don't want to do that.
It's very difficult, and then the amount of ridicule that comes with it. I'll tell you right here now. So, and going back to
I was going back to what you started with. This whole thing is morals and everything like that.
Right, but like one of the problems with doing the work, and I'm just speaking from experience, and yeah, I know I've brought up the Chinese company thing a million times on here, but the fact is the willingness to do the work gradually erodes when you have a bunch of ignorant, whether willfully or willfully to be broad. So I won't say that, but the ignorance, they scream so loudly and they browbeat so completely that it erodes those who are willing to do the work. It erodes the will to do it.
Yes.
And then it turns bad. Like, so we had this one lady who was very much involved with the fight against Fufeng. And there were some things that were a personal, I won't say problem, but personality things with her that made it more difficult at times because she would get swept up in the emotion of things and would end up causing problems because she would derail her own stuff. She wouldn't approach the podium when speaking before the dais about, with things that were, condensable into 5 minutes because, hey, you set forward this rule. We're going to adhere to the rule. We're going to punch you in the throat with this, and the beatings will continue until morale improves in that 5-minute window for each of us. But when you have somebody who is unorganized and comes up with a collection of War and Peace, and you can see all the notes sticking out and all the papers aren't orderly, and sets it down and then has to rifle through everything to find a point that they're talking about, that erodes credibility. And then when you get emotional when you're talking about it because they're not listening, that further erodes things because now people are sitting there saying, you're just crazy because you're going off on all this stuff.
Well, one of the first filters that I use in sorting through the nonsense and the nonstop tsunami of bullshit that is thrown at us is that the first ones that are easy enough to pick off and avoid are the ones that are fueled by an emotional content. If you can't sell your idea by being simple, concise, and precise, going back to that maxim of logical, if you can't say it simply and concisely, then you really don't understand it at all.
That's true.
And the key to that, I've been going through this with my whole Informatica thing, trying to nub this thing down into nuggets that can be knocked around in the noggin. It has to be something that is not emotionally fueled and demanded. If the volume and velocity of what you're selling is required for you to sell it, then you probably have a shitty product.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let me jump into something for a second here that is on the totally different side. You could say this is the emotional side or the spiritual side. I do a daily card reading tarot over on my TikTok. If you haven't gone over there, I don't care if you don't like TikTok or you're bought into the thing about it. It's First Amendment protected. TikTok is fine. No matter what problems you have with who owns it or whatever. Yeah, shut up over there, Jason.
Scotty, I love you, man. I love you. I do. I truly do.
Yeah. Anyway, go over and check out my TikTok and tell me TikTok is not worth it. So I do a daily reading.
At least you're not doing dances.
I do someday.
That's on his OnlyFans page.
That's my OnlyFans page. Yes. And I'm all for OnlyFans.
Wow.
So
what time is it?
Now, I did a tarot reading yesterday that I said with it. Was it yesterday or Friday? I think it was Friday. And I said, I approached today's reading with the question about the verdict on the Trump trial. I said, I just want to know what's out there. Is the ether going to give me anything that I should think about when it comes to this? So I drew 3 cards, which I traditionally do. A card of the day, and then the card of the recent past that led up to it, and the card of the possible near future. And I always say possible because it hasn't happened yet. But it's so near future that as you're hearing it, you're already stepping into it. That's why So here's the 3 cards I drew. And I thought this was in regard to what should my reaction be to this, all right? Tarot reading, take it or leave it for what you want. First card I drew, the 6 of Swords.
This is in the past?
Card I drew.
Is this of the day or of the past?
This is the one of the day.
Okay.
Recent past, the 6 of Coins. Near future.
Don't say 6.
So now,
what would say that again, Scotty?
6 of Cups was the near future. Now, it's interesting. I'm gonna tell you something real quick. This is a quickie here. The 6 of Swords is a card that means you see a family in a boat with the baby, the swords in the deck, and there's a city back here they're sailing away from. And the idea is what's in the past has become intolerable. Can't stay there anymore. You need to move on. It's a card of transitioning. All right, in simple. Card of the past.
You've actually pulled that card for me, and but we'll have that conversation later.
Yeah, we can. Now, the card of the past, 6 of Coins. It shows what's represented to be a woman or a person of means who has money. There aren't people reaching for a handout. Those hands are all not gimme, gimme, gimme. Those hands are, she's saying, give me your hand so I can put a coin into it. Meaning I have been increased. I will increase you. So it's a good card. The card of the past that's saying you've been in a position where things are working for you. All right. Then the third card was the 6 of Cups. This is a card. Cups is your passion. It's all about reminiscing, nostalgia, the way things were, building on that and building a new future out of that. Now, the only problem with this reading is that they all came up like this. They all came up upside down, which I don't read strict reversals, but reversals tend to mean not quite the opposite, in some cases, the opposite of the meaning of the card, or a little different twist on it. So what you got here is, instead of moving away from something that's intolerable, it's saying there are things in the past that have gone on that you've got to move from, but you've got to move into. You don't necessarily have to go somewhere else. The transition is here. I've got to move my attitude. I've got to change my attitude into a better situation, to look for the goodness in it, to look for what needs to be, okay, what do I need to do next is the idea with that.
It's kind of what we've been talking about.
What's that?
It's kind of what we've been talking about.
Exactly. That's what made me think to bring this up. the card of the recent past where she's giving the handout.
Mhm.
This is one of saying she might be coming from a situation where she's been able to give the handout, but she's got to think more wisely about it. Where do I put my money? Where do I put my time? I've got to think of what the best thing to do with this. This is an overview. And of course, the third card is the card of the nostalgia, of thinking, looking at the past and saying, this is what I'm entering into. How can I utilize that? This is a card in the reversal that says there are things in your past. I'm using this example, like sexual abuse when you were a child, or a bad relationships that have left you in a bad place. This is a card that says, do not let the bad things that have happened to you and are governing the way you do things do that to you right now.
Mhm.
It's saying, as a result of figuring out how to move into the best position, it's saying, don't let the stuff that's naturally going to take you to that negative place control you as you step into the future. And now the third thing, I looked at this and I went, now the numbers on the cards mean something. You got
666.
You got 666.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, does that mean what we were taught? 666. So I looked it up and I looked several different sources. The 6 in the tarot is a card that indicates striving for harmony.
Mm.
I was about to.
And not the position of, like the devil. And when you get triune sixes, every single card is a 6. This is pumping that message that says it is time and beyond time, and the only thing you need to focus on is what you can do to create the best inner harmony and the best harmony with the people around you. And so all of this is telling me the verdict. Now, a card reading like this is a daily card reading. It's gone as of yesterday. That was done. It might re-emphasize it another day, but this was Friday morning's reading. And I said, so if I'm to look at the political, this is telling me you're going to move away from something that seems intolerable to you, but you need to move on and create new thinking about it. You don't let the past, as you step into the future, you don't let your past govern you, the bad stuff. You have to look toward what to do better, how to improve it. And the past where you were able to do things better, you got to look at a better way even to do that.
Mhm.
And so this whole thing is basically, Steph just said it in the chat room. This is a little reading that says, keep chugging ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get brought down by the shit that happened in the past. It's like, I got to keep moving forward with this. Well, wasn't that the message of one of my favorite Disney animated films in recent years was Meet the Robinsons. Has anybody ever watched that? My son, Flynn, when he was just a little younger, that movie came out 10 years ago, something like that. He watched it, but he couldn't watch it again. There were parts of it that made him cry. And in that movie, but it's all about this little kid who's an inventor. He's in an orphanage and so on, and he invents things, and somebody from the future comes back, and it ends up it's his kid. You don't find that out till later, but his kid brings him into the future. And
spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert. I'm not going to say much more about it than that, other than the message of the whole film was, as his future self says at the end of the movie, keep moving forward. And that was, I don't care what people think of Disney nowadays, what it's become. That was Walt Disney's saying, keep moving forward.
Tomorrowland at Disney was one of my favorite places to go. And I think what you're saying, Scotty, and it's quite interesting. The word of synchronicity and things being synchronous is starting to have more use and awareness. And there's always the discussion is, are there coincidences or are there not coincidences? Or to me, synchronicity is meaningful coincidence.
Right.
Yes.
So when you look at what we've been talking about here, what your cards very poignantly and predictively have pointed to what this conversation has been about, is the fact that we know that shit's broke. None of it can be fixed or repaired. It has to be replaced. If we start from the original construct of our Constitution and where we came from, and we went back to that and then started to rebuild from there, we would eliminate 99% of the corruption and the crap that's causing all the chaos in the systems.
Yes.
And the only way that we can do that is to be methodical, to have observational neutrality, logic, critical thinking, and reason applied to that which is causing the problem. And
Yes.
it's so obvious to me that the first level of it is we have a group of people that are abusing the system that was originally designed for the way in which we conduct ourselves and the way in which we are organized and administered. That original construct was brilliant. Thank you, Francis Bacon. Thank you, Benjamin Franklin. Thank you, all these guys that actually went to John Adams. They went to the mat to define a system of reasonability, of accountability, and checks and balances in order for a society to actually flourish. What resulted in that? Probably the greatest civilization that the planet has known, save Atlanteans and all the others, which also clearly had their own problems and mistakes. And that's just human nature. You have humans involved. We are flawed to the nth degree, but we have the opportunity to strive to fix those flaws, to find the best in who we actually are, to have that self-examination, that introspection, all of those things that, by the way, just as a side note, everybody that's afraid of AI, we're not going to have a HAL 9000 Terminator singularity. That can't happen. You can't do that with our current science and physics based on grit and billiard balls.
Yes.
You can't. Consciousness is the great problem within all sciences, within all knowledge domains, because as soon as you introduce the observer effect, meaning exactly what we're doing here, we are observing what's going on. We are trying to delineate and give distinction and differentiation to what we see going on. We're trying to make sense out of it. And the only way you can do that is to think for yourself and go back to how to think, eliminate the what to think, and allow the natural, organic positivity of the way that in which we are designed, the way in which we function, and allow that to flourish uninhibited by the corruption and idiocy of others.
Yes. I just this last week put up a little meme that I created and it said, yes, I am part of a cult. I am the cult that brainwashes you to think for yourself. So now I want to read a little something as we're drawing to the end of this show. And it might be a little emotive, and it's certainly the context is slightly different. But do you all remember, and speaking of Walt Disney, it made me think of this. And this is emotional for me, so forgive me if I get there. But there is a lengthy little monologue that Tom Hanks had playing Walt Disney in the movie Saving Mrs. Banks, Saving Mr. Banks. Or was it Finding Mr. Banks or Saving Mr. Banks?
I think
Finding Mr. Banks.
Finding.
And I've got this pulled up, and I want to read this quote to you. He's talking about storytellers, but apply this. Listen to what this says. This is a little long, the build-up to the quote, which starts, I posted this before. It starts the quote, a section of the quote I have quoted before starts with, I'm tired of remembering it that way. But in this movie, if you watch, this is well worth the time, by the way. He says to Mrs. Banks, he says, I have my own Mr. Banks. And this is in context to the story. Now he moves into his story. He says, have you ever been to Kansas City, Mrs. Travers? She's the one who, by the way, wrote Mary Poppins. And they were making the movie Mary Poppins in this film. And she was having struggles with it. And they got into her struggles about her past. But he says, do you know Missouri at all? Well, it's mighty cold there in the winters, bitter cold. And my dad, Elias Disney, he owned a newspaper delivery route there. 1,000 papers twice daily, a morning and an evening edition. And Dad was a tough businessman. He was a save the penny any way you can type of fella. so he wouldn't employ delivery boys. No, no, no. He used me and my big brother, Roy. I was 8 back then, just 8 years old. And like I said, winters are harsh. And old Elias, he didn't believe in new shoes until the old ones were worn through. And honestly, Mrs. Travers, the snow drifts, sometimes they were up over my head. And we'd push through that snow like it was molasses. The cold and wet seeping through our clothes and our shoes, skin peeling from our faces. Sometimes I'd find myself sunk down in the snow, just waking up because I wanted to have passed out or something. I must have passed out or something. I don't know. And then it was time for school. And it was too cold and wet to figure out equations and things. And then it was back out in the snow again to get home just before dark. Mother would feed us dinner, and then it was time to go right back out and do it again for the evening edition. You'd best be quick there, Walt. You'd better get those newspapers up on that porch and under that storm door. Papa's going to lose his temper again and show you the buckle end of his belt, boy. I don't tell you this to make you sad, Mrs. Travers. Now we're getting to the quote that was the build up to it. He says, I don't want to make you sad. I love my life. I think it's a miracle. And I loved my dad. He was a wonderful man, but rare is the day when I don't think about that 8-year-old boy delivering newspapers in the snow and old Elias Disney with that strap in his fist. And I'm just so tired, Mrs. Travers. I'm tired of remembering it that way. Aren't you tired too, Mrs. Travers? Now, we all have our sad tales, but don't you want to finish the story? Let it all go and live a life that isn't dictated by the past. It's not the children she comes to save. It's their father. It's your father. He's talking about the Mary Poppins story and all the stuff, by the way, that Mrs. Travers had written in that was her personal life. She said, he's not coming to save the father, which is what her struggle was internally. So she's coming to save the children. Or not the children, I'm sorry. She's coming to save the father. He says, it's the father. It's your father. It's him this is all about, isn't it? All of it, everything. He says, forgiveness, Mrs. Travers, is what I learned from your books in every movie house all over the world, in the eyes and the hearts of my kids and other kids and their mothers and fathers for generations to come. George Banks, her memory of her father, will be honored. George Banks will be redeemed. George Banks and all he stands for will be saved. Maybe not in life, but in imagination. Because that's what we storytellers do. We restore order with imagination. We instill hope again and again and again. This is what we are doing, gentlemen. We're not telling tales or tall tales, but we're incorporating the things that we know, the things we believe in, the things that we know. Look, we can't go in the past and change the past. All we can do is, as Disney put in that quote, we can change the imaginations. We can use the imaginations of people to change it. I believe we can use more than the imagination. If you extrapolate this whole idea into what's going on, we can use the common sense. It's not really common, but the sense of people. We can use those things and build on them. And we are the storytellers. We are the ones who, as Jason said, we go out there and we start doing the thing, even on a local level. We're the ones that create the future. And that's what we do.
And Scotty, to your point, and to that, I'd like to finish off and read something very short.
Please.
That is, it's called The Elders. And it is who we are, and in particular. And I think this is part of the perspective that is what we've been talking about, and that is going to make a difference going forward. So it's called The Elders. They call us the elders We were born in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. We grew up in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We studied in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We dated in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We got married and discovered the world in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We ventured into the 80s and 90s. We stabilized the 2000s. We became wiser in 2010. And we are firmly moving beyond 2020. It seems like we live in 8 different decades, 2 different centuries, 2 separate millenniums. We have gone from the telephone with a long distance operator to video calls anywhere in the world. We've gone from slides to YouTube, vinyl records to online music, handwritten letters to email and WhatsApp. We've from live game radio to black and white television to color television, and then to 3D HD television. I used to go to Blockbuster. Now I watch Netflix. We met the first computers, punch cards, floppy disks, and now we have gigabytes and megabytes on our smartphones. We wore shorts all our childhood, and then trousers, Oxfords, Rockets, full shells, and blue jeans. We dodged infantile paralysis, meningitis, polio, tuberculosis, swine flu, and now COVID-19. We used to ride roller skates, tricycles, bicycles, mopeds, gasoline or diesel cars, and now we drive hybrids or electric cars. Yes, we've been through a lot, but what a life we've had. They would describe us as exemplars, people born in that world of the 50s who had an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. We have literally seen it all. Our generation has literally moved and lived and witnessed more than anyone else in all dimensions of life. It is our generation that is literally adapted to the only constant: change. We are that group. We are the elders. We are the ones that everybody is going to be dependent on to facilitate this progressive, positive movement forward out of away from the dumpster fires. The last 2 generations can't start a push mower. They don't even know what that means, let alone what it is.
Or a rotary phone.
We cannot depend on them to be participants in this change ahead. They will be, unfortunately, unwilling workers in helping make it happen. But they're not. The ideas and the imagination that you talked about, Scotty, are not going to come from the last 2 generations. It's going to come from us, the elders, those of us that have seen the change and that know that the profundity of that change is what's going to be happening going forward.
Yeah.
We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that are necessary for the change in the future. So I am extremely blessed and honored to be in that position. I am to be in this place and time, to that old axiom of may you live in interesting times. Well, you got that shit in spades right now. And to be here to participate, to be engaged with it is an honor, and it's a responsibility that all of us must take seriously. We must jettison the bullshit, the flotsam and the jetsam that has been packed in and on and around and up all of our minds and all of our orifices that we use to navigate. We've got to stop that. We've got to go back to what we know is actual and real, sans emotion, using logic, critical thinking, and common sense, and the ability to understand systems and processes, what I started off with. There is a system and the process of all the things that we've gone through, and we have seen them come and go. We've seen the ones that work, and we've seen the ones that don't. We have participated in both. Some of us have been seriously involved in some of the chaos and the crap that when I was involved in the New Age movement back in the 90s, I was one, and I'm glad I went through it, but I was pushing that bullshit too.
Oh, sure.
I now have seen the light, and we have got to the point where we now have the knowledge to make the change that we need.
There it is. Amen to that, Professor. And what no better way to end this particular program than that right there. And
Professor, you speak,
Sean,
you speak the truth, brother.
yes. Sean Arbest Sr. in the chat room says, let them strike up their matches and watch us rise from the ashes. We are the Phoenix. Very true. And so any last words from anybody before we sign off?
The power of positivity and the only constant in the universe, which is change, is upon us. Grab it with alacrity. Grab it with purpose and passion. Go forth and be the change you want to see. And make that your mission. Because without it, life is just going to be useless. And fortunately, the life ahead of us is going to be phenomenal.
So let me just say on that note, keep moving forward. And everybody, live long and prosper. Have a great day. We'll see you this week.